what's it doing here? Why is it in a bucket? So it's the last time I'm going to donate blood, so it is. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk to you for the next little while, and we will have time for questions. Which is why, as I see it, why fostering an environment of healing and hope matters more than ever, because it has been. I don't think anyone would be considered wise and insightful if they didn't notice that, if they'd noticed that it's been a particularly challenging time, and actually that's a global challenge. I was in New Zealand and Australia before Christmas, and even though it's their heading into their summer, they're having a rough time everywhere, because the whole world is short of people right now. In the UK, there's a shortage. So there's 534,000 fewer people over the age of 50 in the workforce, which, there's a whole bunch of reasons around that, both existential and other, about why people have chosen to leave. But it does have an impact. And for listening to Amanda Pritchard, who is the chief exec of the NHS, earlier this week, talking about in her 25 years, she has never known it so tough. And I'm very struck that there is very much that kind of narrative, which and it's a narrative in which both things are true. And the main narrative we hear is how tough it is, how awful it is, how staff are this and people like that. And it's absolutely horrendous. My local hospital, at the same time, my local hospital is Warwick Hospital. And just before Christmas, I was invited to go and hand out the Recondition the Nation awards around the wards, which was lovely because I'm part of that, and the amazing work that's led by Geraldine Rogers and Dr. Amit Arora and others in the east of England, Nick Holding from ESIS and so on. And going around the world, what was really very, very striking is how proud people are, how much they love their job. They're getting on doing what they're doing every single day. They're being innovative and passionate. And I think there's this twin narrative which we need to be acutely aware of, that while it's tough and while it's challenging, I don't think you have to dust things off too much. By the way, if you are not on mute, please put yourself onto mute, because I know we're getting some breakthrough stuff as well. But I don't think you have to stretch too far or have to look too far to realize there's still a great deal of healing and a great deal of hope. And that's what the theme of this session is about. So let's look at, and by the way, I do want to acknowledge Professor Linda Holt, who's my business manager and a million other things, amazing for Health Service 360. So if you love the slides, these are hers. If you don't like slides, they're mine. But what is it that cultures that offer healing do? What is it they do? Well, what they first of all do is they actively promote well-being. They promote it. There's many, that's you, Rebecca. I don't mean to call you in. I'll call you forward, but if you can hear this and you can go on mute, that'd be fabulous, if you don't mind. So go back one. So I think, although it's very early days, I am by nature an optimist, and I believe there are many, many dividends that COVID will offer us that we're starting to see emerge, and one of which is we talk about mental well-being in a way we never have in the past. My best qualification, honestly, is that I'm a psych nurse. That's my best, I'm proudest of. And my nursing class now, we started, as my son likes to say, I didn't train in the last century, I trained in the last millennium. And we are all of us in touch with each other. And we on our WhatsApp group, we chat about this, as how much things have transformed towards an acknowledgement of and promotion of mental well-being. That's what cultures that do that. They also critically, and I'm going to talk more about belonging later, they create a sense of belonging, being part of it, inclusivity. They enable collective healing. And what I mean by that is they acknowledge what the challenge is, but they support individuals and collectively to have the conversations, to support each other to get better, to give people a sense of purpose and connection, and to enable them to have the space and the time to heal in their souls. And, you hear a lot of this. It feels like the public discourse has got a lot rougher in the last few years. It's gone from claps to slaps. But what you often hear is this, oh, who is responsible? Who do we blame? And I think what we often hear this language of is calling people out. And I think that language is very problematic for the simple reason is when you call somebody out, what you do is you diminish them. When you call them in, when you call them forward, what you're saying is, you are better than this, you are bigger than this, you have an opportunity to change, and we don't want you to be a person who feels ashamed. We want you to be a person that actually knows where a line has been stood over. And I love this line. It's from Oscar Wilde in his play A Woman of No Importance, a language, a play title you probably never get away with now. But it's this great line, which is, every saint has a past and every sinner has a future. And cultures that heal enable people to have a future. So what is it you as an individual can do? What can you do collectively? First of all, there is nothing, it is not a treat. It is not a reward. It is not something you should think of something special to say you're looking after yourself, withdrawing, taking time out for you. Looking after yourself is the most important thing you can do. I'm having a weekend off shouldn't be seeing yourself as a reward for hard work. It's an investment in yourself and your future. But it's also about paying attention. And has any of you, I do, by the way, please do use the chat. We'd love to see you've got comments as you go. But has any of you ever done something where you sort of thought, oh God, if only I trusted my gut, if I'd only trusted my instincts, I'm sure I wouldn't have made that decision. It's actually, I think, important that we do pay attention to those little voices inside us going, I'm not sure about this. Wisest advice I got in my career was never get flattered into a job. And the once or twice that did happen, it didn't go well for me because I was in the wrong kind of job. So trust yourself and trust your instincts and lead courageously. People who lead, and everyone, leader isn't a job title. It's a way of thinking. It's a perception. It's a behavior. It's not a title. It's not a position. But leading courageously is actually having the courage to say, this is what I think. This is my view. You don't, and being wrong is great, because people who are wrong and have the courage to change their minds have got the ability to, that's intellectual, emotional, and every other type of maturity. And so one thing I quite like is thinking about something and hearing something that's different and then deciding I'm going to change how I think about what I thought. And that's in its own way, it's about leading courageously and speaking up. But it's also about creating a space where it is safe to talk. Where you work in an environment where people can't say what they actually think, that is not a safe environment. But by the same token, you enabling us in a leadership space, often it's about holding space for people. Too often people talk in order to respond, as opposed to they listen in order to respond, as opposed to listening to understand. And making it safe to talk is about giving people permission to say, this doesn't feel right. And coming from a place of curiosity to understand why. Starting conversations when you need to, because sometimes we hold back on the things that matter, and what we have is the great big elephants. And that's a timing issue as much as it is anything else in healing issue. If you, and again, the practical example, as a student nurse being told off as the nurse, this is in Galway, there's the nurse who liked to talk to patients, and I was told off in front of everyone by the sister for this. I don't know if she ever realized how much of a compliment she had paid, but it wasn't the time to start that conversation. When you have, I would sum it up like this: applaud and praise publicly, criticize in private. But it's been a rough couple of years. I could get out of New Zealand, but I couldn't get back in. So I spent over 2 years not seeing my son. And it was hard. It was hard. All of us have been in the same storm this last year. Some have been in cruise liners, some have been in a boat that's leaking with a broken oar. And I think we have to, it's one of the things, the other dividends, I think, of COVID is that we are recognizing we need to be kinder to ourselves, cut ourselves some slack, because a healing culture starts with your healing, but it also gives permission and support to other people as well. And it may seem obvious, but educating yourself, acknowledging your emotions, acknowledge those feelings, and leaning into discomfort. As our wise psych tutor used to say to us, enable people, enable yourself to enjoy the depression, because its denial actually doesn't go away. It's like grief. You deny it, it just corrodes you. So educating yourself is really important too. And I think if I'm optimistic about one thing, I think we've got so much better. Which brings us really to, in terms of environments that foster healing and hope, are ones that foster belonging. And EY Ernst Young in 2020 found that 40% of workers felt physically or psychologically disconnected at work. And I look at that, that was year one of the major, the world's biggest social experiment, where billions of people went into lockdown. And I do wonder if that number has gone up or gone down. And I can't help but feel that for many it's gone down. And I think, if you, without seeking to get unduly political, I think the disconnect between government and workers, where 500,000 people took industrial action yesterday, the disconnect is itself telling of society. And yet the unity, where people are saying, I support people's rights to take industrial action. I know the CSP took industrial action for the first time in its whole existence, and likewise with the Royal College of Nursing and others. And yet people feel connected to one another, and that itself, I think, is telling. But there's a wonderful Naitahu is a Maori iwi. Iwi is actually literally means bone. It's tribe, if you like. And there's a fantastic book called Belonging by a Kiwi called Owen Eastwood. He lives over here, and I can only commend it to you. And every workplace culture, every team has what the Maori word is whakapapa, which means family, belonging, connection to each other. And wherever you work, you have your own culture. And I'm often struck that we may have one health system, but within it, there's 1,000 different villages, and there's microcultures. And anyone, whether you're a nurse or a therapist or a doctor, it's fantastic to see Dr. Mike, Dr. Mike McCabe here. And I'm going to talk later about Call Me, his wonderful campaign that he started. And it's around recognizing that when we went as students and others into wards, you might go one ward to another, it might be 20 meters apart, and yet it's a wholly different country. So each culture, there is no one workplace culture. There's thousands of workplace cultures, which are microcultures in their own. What psychological model do I use? Asks Nikki. Do you know, that's such a great question, and I'll be candid, I haven't got a clue, but I tend to find in life that I discovered a theory after I've done the practice. So anyone who's thinking that sounds like, I would love to know. So please do chip in so I can. But I probably ought to know as a psych nurse. I really should. If in doubt, I blame Freud. Now, where are the places where we seek belonging? Well, you won't be too surprised to know that mostly it's home, family, a big chunk. Thank you, Nikki. A big chunk is work, about a third. We talk about work families, and that in many ways is a metaphor. People tend to get a bit, they're not your family, but actually we may be more connected with people we work with. Religion, perhaps surprisingly for some, in an increasingly secular world, religion still plays a really important part. I'm a terrible Catholic, so I got a PhD in guilt, and I don't practice, but I was in Jersey, flew in yet this afternoon, and I was walking back from where I was doing my work the other day, and I found the main church of Jersey, and I sat in there. And whether it's a church or a synagogue that I've been into, or a mosque, it's that space that holds space, that enables people to connect. And I think we should not underestimate the importance of those things. And then, of course, there's community as well. Those are the places where we seek belonging. And yet people feel more belonging when colleagues just check in. How's it going? How are you traveling? What's going? It's just checking in. And the art of the check-in is just to spend time to find out what matters, who they are, what they do. And Linda gives a really great example of somebody she worked with in an emergency department who's just seemed to be all over everything. And what she discovered is this woman played hockey. And because she played hockey, she was really good at the sort of, if you like, the situational awareness of knowing where her teammates were and able to apply that in the work setting. And I think that itself was his own superpower. So by finding out who people are, what matters, what they do, you can actually learn that different depths of connection with them. And that fosters that belonging as well. And people belong when there's 4 bits. When people feel seen, when they feel connected to purpose, to their colleagues, to work, when they feel supported, and when they feel proud of where they work. And there's a study of 200,000 people in all kinds of countries and all kinds of industries. And the top 10, money came number 7. The 3 most important pieces why people work is a sense of purpose, working with their colleagues and peers, and working for a manager who likes and respects them and whom they like and respect. So if you like, 2 of those top 3 are about people and 1 is intrinsic about purpose. And when people have those elements of seen, connected, supported, proud, that's when they feel that they really belong. So if those, if you like, are about those elements of connectivity, the healing connect conversations are often about being able to articulate our emotions, being able to use the language, which is more than just a broad brush, and also leaning into the discomfort of what these emotions are. A colleague of mine's a speech therapist, and she worked in the prison service for a reasonable while. And she was telling me once that the prison governor once said that if he had to let go of the nurses and the psychologists and others, the last he would let go of would be the speech therapists. And the reason is that 70% of prisoners, she was saying, have a communication problem. And often there's this language of being able to express emotion, which then becomes manifest in quite dysfunctional ways, leading to all kinds of challenges. So, a shout out to our speech therapy colleagues, because they are worth their weight in petrol too. But the healing conversations are about enabling us to connect with those emotions, articulate those emotions, to feel and lean into those emotions. Because from there we can, in order to heal, you have to be able to feel. And this draws us in the healing sense into forgiveness, because the real purpose of forgiveness is stop letting what happened yesterday hurt you today. It is, if you will, about giving yourself permission to let go. And sometimes I think we get so preoccupied by the hurt and the anger and the dismay is what's going on, is we're drinking the poison while we want the other person to die. And they may be completely oblivious to the hurt that they have unintentionally often caused. But it's about forgiving. And sometimes that forgiveness is our forgiveness. That doesn't mean forgiving them. It's actually forgiving ourselves and letting go of what the things that have hurt us. And that is really, forgiveness starts with you. There's so much that we can control, but there's an awful lot more that we can't. And Stephen Covey, in 1989, he talked about the circle of influence and the circle of concern. And it is an exercise worth doing, is write down all the things about the circle of concern, their behaviors, their attitudes, their approach, their language, their everything, the things actually you can't control. And your circle of influence is your attitude, your behavior, the things actually over which you have control. And it's an exercise worth doing, because when you start to separate these things out, it itself offers relief. And we've done this, Linda Holton, and I've done this many, many times with groups. And that exercise alone for many people is itself makes the problems smaller. because it enables them to say, you know, I can't do anything about pay. I can't do anything about the pressure my department does. I can't do, but what I can do is show up, be my best, be supportive, be encouraging. That may be the type of thing that will enable people to feel that they belong, and then they will stay. Just as an aside, instead of doing exit interviews, we should be doing entry interviews and mid-time interviews every year or two, every couple of years. Why did you come? What was it that brought you here? Why are you staying? Because it's a bit late after they're going out the door. We should, as people who work with people, find out the whys in terms of seeking the shining bright spots. You see, that first you start with you, and then, for goodness whiz, with teams, the organization, the system. All of these elements are about letting go. And I'm not going to spend time on this one because I did talk about calling people forward as opposed to calling people out. And that's about inviting people to be to something greater, be bigger than themselves. And I think that's where purpose lies. That's what I'm so, you know, I'm just so honored to be part as the honorary president of Agile. Proud to be a nurse, because we are all, every one of us, Mike is a doctor, as an anesthetist, we each are part of something bigger than all of us. God, that's a brilliant thing to be. See, the workplace culture is, you like, senior team leaders are the ones who set the tone. It's the married managers who carry the culture, but it's peers who drive belonging. That's what cultures are about. And although the fish may rot from the head, the managers may carry the culture, it's the peers who enable, support, and create and enable and drive the belonging. And this is the thing, when you know better, you often do better. And a lovely example came from a theatre tech and an ODA. And he was this is in Sydney, and he was brand new to an emergency, to a theatre, and went in the first day, and he's having lunch, and all the staff in the staff room are all grizzling about this surgeon, all grizzling away about him. And he finishes his lunch and he goes out and he sees the surgeon on the corridor. Says, mate, did you know this thing pisses them off? And he said, no, I didn't. Oh, I'll change then. This had been going on for 7 years. Nobody had had the conversation, because he then knew better, he did better. And unless sometimes we just say, you know, I don't know if you know this, but it is surprising. We often assume ill intent when there's no intent, and we make assumptions about people. But actually, we all live in a little bubble in our own heads and tell our own stories. And sometimes those stories are not very helpful. And you know what? I'll tell you something all for free. If you spoke to your friends the way you talk to yourself sometimes, you wouldn't have any. So when you know better, you do better. So the skills for leaders are about emotional awareness. This is at team level as well. It's like knowing what's happening and paying attention to the tendencies, to the habits of your team. Emotion management is, what does a team's, what's its own awareness? Is there a we mentality or an I mentality? Do the team take responsibility, or do they say, that one over there did it? Do they own, or do they other? Internal relationships are about the team effort, which is about building good relationships within the team, the effort that is made. All relationships take effort, and if only one is making the effort, that's not a relationship. It's two randoms who are co-located. So making the effort, that applies to relationships personally as well. And then finally, there's the external relationships, the attitude and influence beyond the team. That stuff matters. You're a group of physiotherapists, and the physiotherapist is having a little crack at the speech therapy department or social work. That's about how are those external relationships managed, and how do you make them even better? So it becomes about, there's no them, there's only us. Because culture change Culture change combines hearts, heads, and hands in that order. And hearts are about, we connect with stories. And I'm going to show you a wonderful story very shortly. That's about the why. It's the why that matters. The head is the strategy. That's the context, the plans, the ganchas, the what and the how. And the hand, this is the bit that's often missed. I believe in it. I think it's the right direction. What do I do? I want to be part of that. And really good people will say, actually, what you could do is, you could make sure that everyone has a drink. We'll get lids on the water jugs, and we'll color code them. This is what we, and if you see somebody, say, hey, well done on being dressed. That's love seeing you being dressed. That's great to see. Why wouldn't you? Because then you can be part of something. And whether you're a therapy assistant, whether you're a chief allied, whether you're a ward clerk, whether you're an orderly, doesn't matter, because you've got the heads, the hearts, and the hearts, the heads, and the hands all coming together. That's how it changed. Because first people change, and then organizations change in that order. But it's also about knowing where to put your energy, where to put your efforts, where the circle of concern is, and putting your energy into your circle of influence. That's wisdom. You see, culture doesn't change simply because we want it to change. It changes when behavior and everyday realities change. That's how culture changes. One heart, one mind, one conversation at a time. And it takes courage, and it takes commitment. You know, courage comes from the old German word core, meaning heart, and literally it means to expose one's heart. And it takes commitment. It's not giving up. You know, it's not how often you fall, it's how often you get back up again. It's just never, ever giving up and staying. When you're connected to purpose, it's that thing about people, as Nietzsche said, people put up with any what when they've got a great why. And here's a great way. And Mike, in a little while, assuming you're still here, I'm going to bring you in because you have an amazing story to tell. And this is about healing, and this is about hope. I'm going to take out my earphones for a moment so that you can all hear this. And this is a beautiful campaign initiated by Dr. Mike McCabe and Lisa St. Worcester. Supported by Linda Holt, Sam Foster, the Chief Nurse of Oxford, and myself. And this is a campaign called Call Me. And if you will, have a watch of this video.
As a healthcare professional, we quite often come across patients who have a different preferred name to their legal forename. Getting their preferred term of address is really important. I sometimes feel I'm in the doghouse when I come to hospital. Everyone calls me Alfred. No one's called me that, apart from my mum. That was only when I was in trouble.
I'm non-binary. I use they, them pronouns. I first came out to a group of friends who I met online. They only knew me by my username, so that's what they called me. I decided that's what I wanted everyone to call me, and actually, it feels really great.
Some people at school call me Benji, Ben, or Benny. Don't like nicknames, but I do like my name, my full name.
You might think it sounds old-fashioned, but I don't like being called by my first name in hospital. You don't know me.
My daughter had to spend a few nights in hospital, and she was so scared. The staff asked what she would like to be called, and they couldn't believe what came out of her mouth.
I had an operation a couple of years ago, and when I woke up, someone was calling my first name, but I didn't realise it was me they were talking to because I don't use that name. I use my middle name.
I'm a trans woman, and some of my notes in healthcare haven't been updated with my name. When people use my dead name, the name I used to go by, it's really upsetting because it makes me feel like I'm not being respected.
My family's all Irish and I have quite a traditional Irish name, but the spelling of it can throw some people sometimes. Instead of asking how to say it, sometimes people either just guess or try and shorten it, and actually my name's really important to me.
Approximately 30% of people prefer a different name to what is their first formal forename. 1/3 of patients is likely to be one of your family members and many of your friends.
Much better to get it right first time, but if you don't, just correcting yourself and apologising is the best thing to do, not making a big deal of it.
Just ask.
Makes coming into hospital a much nicer experience.
It's important to me.
It's who I am.
Call me Fred.
Katie.
Fiona.
Call me Mike.
Call me Rainbow Fairy.
Call me Ren.
Oshin.
Benjamin.
Call me Mrs. Pitcher.
I love this. Like, no matter how many times I see it, one, I always go, when I think of see Rainbow Fairy. I didn't know, by the way, full disclosure, my son Will is a filmmaker and videographer, created this, and I didn't know his name is now Oshin. But it's just beautiful because it just shows the difference that we can make by something as simple as finding out what people like to be called. My dad, God rest him, he wasn't William, he was Billy, but when he went to hospital, guess what he got called, you know? So we can offer hope and healing to so many people by doing the small things. It's not the big stuff, it's the little stuff that really makes the biggest difference. You see, hope is the conviction that despair will never have the last word. And at a time it is extra tough, hope isn't the same as optimism. Hope is, as Václav Havel, the Czech poet and president, he talked about hope as having tender roots poisoned by cynicism. And while we should be realistic, because hope isn't blind, we should also not give up on hope, because we've all had hopeless leaders. But actually, when you think of that word, they are hopeless leaders. And the thing is, you cannot underestimate the importance and value of hope, because when a leader gives up hope, things collapse like a pack of cards. So we need to hold on to that thing. And leaders are dealers in hope. And hopeful thinking is the belief and an expectation and the desire, if you like, the hope that the future will be better than the present. That's hopeful thinking. It doesn't guarantee it, but you're hopeful for it. And that's why hope is not without realism. Hopeful thinking is actually, I can't control a lot, but I have a power to make it so, because how I frame things, how I choose to see things is a choice. It's absolutely a choice. It's the adage, like, life is 20% what happens, 80% what happens, and 20%, or it's the other way around. 20% what happens, 80% is how you tend to see things. And I was walking back to where I stayed in Jersey tonight, and had a big rucksack on and a big bottle of water, and I took a tumble because I stepped off the roadside in order to let somebody pass me, and I turned and I went flying. It was wonderfully melodramatic. And this poor person was absolutely horrified. I was killing myself laughing. I thought, Jesus, I thought you'd been practicing for a long time now, trying one foot in front of the other foot, but you clearly haven't quite got it. And I had the power to make it so how I chose to see that moment. And they started laughing because they could see. And you see, this is when you can find, that's more than just hopeful thinking. It's about choosing how you see life. And it's a choice. It's always a choice, because there's many paths to the things we do. There's many paths. There isn't one. So the worst thing we can say to children is, what do you want to be when you grow up? Because actually what they do is they narrow their vista of what they might want to be, and they offer answers which they deem that may be socially acceptable to others. And actually what we need to do is enable people to have many paths, many choices to do the way they do things, because it's also acknowledging that none is free of obstacles. Never saying to a child, oh, you got that great grade because you're clever. It's, you got that because you worked hard. None of us got to where we got to by licking stones. We got there because of hard work. And we should celebrate that stuff, those obstacles we all faced. The winter comes just as summer does. And it's about leaning into those times and spending time looking after ourselves, knowing that this too, it will pass. You see, I'm fascinated. Those of you who know me know I'm absolutely fascinated by language. And sometimes it's about helping to see what's hidden in plain sight, because in the word compassion, there's both compass and passion. The guide that helps us find our way, the desire to look after other people. Joe, that video, watch this space. We are working on a website, and we will, in fact, Mike, Sam, Linda and I talked last night about this. So watch this space in the next very, very soon. Let's look at this one, heart and conscience, because actually, again, hidden in plain sight is both art and science. And it seems to me that it's about the knowledge in our head, the passion in our soul, in our heart, and the fire that's in our soul. That is what makes us all of that we are. And it's that alignment of these things that makes us who we are, what we are, why we do what we do. But as I draw this to an end, it's also about remembering almost where we started, about finding your medicine bag. I see on this thing, on this webinar, one of my very favorite people, Bonnie Tai, who is in Australia, a pharmacist who's done some wonderful work. And if you read her stuff in the Elephant Journal, it's well worth the read, because she's made choices which are about healing, caring, filling that medicine bag. And that medicine bag can be anything to anyone. It's that having that bath with the candles and reading a book and all those things. But what's in your medicine bag? Think about it and use it, because it goes back to ancient times. It does strike me that the science is now catching up what people did many, many thousands of years ago. We are slowly waking up to the fact that the medicine bag matters, looking after ourselves matters, taking care of others matters. Because in the end, hope is a gift you don't have to surrender, a power you don't have to give away. Thank you so much for your time, for listening. We have about a quarter of an hour. So what I'll do is I'm going to stop my share and let's chat. My people could talk to your people. And we could all talk to each other. And it's fantastic to see so many of you here as well. So observations, comments. Naomi, I see, said, belonging as a team is best when we all know and use the names people like to be called. Absolutely. Name badges easy, like white on, red, yellow on black. And your thing, Amy, about Nancy Klein's a singer, isn't she? Time to think. Much of what you're hearing and seeing is your effect on them. It's so true. It's absolutely. And Amy, did you want to come in and comment on that? Oh, bless you, Beth. Superstar. Thank you.
I mean, I just, it's something that, a quote that really sticks with me. And I mean, it just, not a plug, but it's a brilliant book, because just, it shows, it talks through the importance of listening. And that's something that I've certainly learned more and more of the importance of as I've gone through my career. And yes, that's one of the quotes from what is a very, very good book.
Fantastic. Thank you. Yeah, that is, can't commend it enough either, Amy. Thank you. Nikki, are you happy for people to use some of your slides? Absolutely, more than happy. And again, I do want to acknowledge that it's Linda Holt, Professor Linda Holt, who's created them all. She's honestly, that woman could build shells on your eyebrows. She's so creative. So absolutely delighted for that. Thank you. Mike, I don't know if I know you had, when we spoke last night, you had some fun and games with your internet connection. If you're happy, I don't know if you can hear and you would like to come in and comment on Call Me.
Oh, thanks, Brian. Hello, Brian. Hello, everyone out there in the world. Yeah, it's always lovely to see you and to hear you speak, Brian, as I'm sure everyone will agree. Yeah, I think just to reinforce what you said about names and the importance, I think the staggering thing is, as when you actually look into this, like the numbers are almost 1 in 3 patients like to be known as something that's not their kind of first formal forename. And that name connection is so important. It's the basis of patient care. It's the basis of all our relationships. It's the basis of our identity. And so in Worcester, where we've launched this, and we've done it to 120,000 people, asking them what they want to be called. And that's where we get the 30% from. And just the connection it makes amazing difference to an elderly patient, to a confused patient, to someone in A&E, to just the basis of all our relationships about names. And it's amazing how often we've been getting it wrong. So that's why the birth of Call Me and trying to make this a standard of care for everyone, because I'm sure all of you listening, you don't have to think too far about someone you love and care for who likes to be known by something different. So that's the basis of Call Me. So yeah, I hope you all find it interesting.
Yep, thank you. And as I said, watch this space to come, because we're working behind the scenes and doing all kinds of stuff. And Mike's an amazing champion, bringing this wonderful coalition of folk. Naomi, would you like to? I see you got your hand up.
Hi. Oops. Hi. I've come across for the first time recently Namaste Care, and thought, as part of a ward atmosphere, but also as part of the team being part of connection, it sounded very good concept, and I wondered your opinion, or whether we could look into that more in the future.
Yeah, I mean, the short answer will be absolutely. And anything that makes it better. This I know, anything that works for patients always works for staff. And at the same time, we shouldn't have a one size fits all, because there's many different sizes. So yeah, for sure, we should support people to do what feels intuitively right. And it's also about culturally and as well as respectfully. I know Bonnie, and it's 5:45 in Brisbane. And you have shared your article on shame and healing. So thank you so much for doing that. And I know I'm being a bit uncertain here, but Bonnie, you may have written about some of this stuff yourself. So yes, is the short answer, Naomi. Sorry, it's a bit of a woolly answer, but yes, if it works, absolutely. And
Thank you.
So, because you also made the comment about putting patients' initials over their beds, and actually, you know what, that depersonalizes it, doesn't it, really? You just become a bunch of letters. People turn into a vessel and a compendium of symptoms, rather than a person with a backstory and a life behind them. So I'm a big fan of the sunflower approach. What do you like to be called? What do you like? What's your story? All of those things. It's a rich story to be told. It's also why when people sit out, you can go to the likes of B&Q or Bunnings and stuff like that, and just to get these little foldaway tables. And if it's a 6-bedded bay, and I saw this in Nottingham, it's fantastic. Throw a bit of a cloth over it, have a cup of tea. You're improving hydration, you're getting people to talk to each other, and this creates that healing environment. It's just beautiful.
We used to do that on the wards, and it was wonderful. And then one person gets COVID, and then everybody has to spread out again, which is such a shame.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. And it's the challenge is the N equals 1, which is just anecdata. And that doesn't feel right either. I know that common sense is becoming so rare, it's almost like a superpower. But sometimes we need to think. I mean, my mindset is service improvement, not QI. It's not about RCTs. It's about 80% is enough. And I think we should remember, what would most people want? So
thank you.
That's all right. Amy, again, thank you for that. And please, we've still got 9 minutes. You enjoy doing landing and standing. Sorry, Amy. I enjoy doing lying and standing BPs because it's particularly great time to look. Oh, Mike, I think your app is on, Mike, or your phone is on, I should say. What's the word I'm looking for? Microphone. That's it. You're gone. Amy enjoys lying and standing BPs because it's a particularly great time to learn about who they are as a person, what their story is. That's why I love DD. Amy, tell us more. This is your story.
Well, no, I just think amongst the the busyness of, as you say, particularly being in the emergency department, it's so easy to get swept up in the importance of rapid discharge. Of course, that's important, but equally, just having almost, you could argue, that protected time where that individual is encouraged to just stand still and and just take a moment where you can, as a therapist and as the the person being cared for, you can just stop and have that time to get to know each other. I think it's a great opportunity that we maybe wouldn't often get otherwise.
Oh, 100%. And I love your comment as well, Beth, about when you spot an accent, you quiz on where they're from and what the story is, which is really great, Although I did get a taxi driver in Christchurch saying to me, which bit of South Africa are you from? So, oh, well, it's north and west, keep flying, 12 hours. Sarah, you're doing, you're on mute, or you can.
Sorry, I'm there now.
So I will take interpretive dance.
No, I really loved a lot of the comments, and I think so much of it is about connection, isn't it? And I know that with COVID, with all of these things, with so many other things going virtual, even I see so many of my older patients that are so reluctant to make GP appointments, things because they're worried they've got to talk to them over the phone, and that's a barrier for them, and all of those things. I think certainly as physios, and if there's any other professions on here, the fact that when we get that chance to make that connection, whether it's a physical one, like Amy was saying, when we're sitting and talking to them while we're waiting for their lying and standing blood pressures, those connections I think are really healing as well. I saw a really lovely lady yesterday, and she was one of those people that I really wanted just to sit and chat to her. She was 90 years old. She'd lived in Rome the most of her life. She wanted to very much be called a miss rather than her Christian name. She clearly led an incredible life, and she was sitting there in front of me, perhaps not used to using the NHS. She sounds like she has probably had private healthcare most of her life, and by the end of our conversation and our assessment, we had made a really lovely connection, and she stopped as she walked out to say thank you so much for listening. And even if I've done nothing, I think I've made a connection and somebody knows we care. And whether that's with a patient or whether that's with a member of staff, that can make a difference to people, especially in the environment we're working in at the moment.
Absolutely. And I think it's the difference between patients feeling cared for and cared about. And I think that's it's an important distinction, because all of us are memory makers, and sometimes we may forget our patients, they don't forget us. So we have a quite profound impression and impact on the people for whom we care. And this kind of brings me to Nimalini's point, which is about work with different ethnic groups and people known by a completely different name. Nimalini, are you happy to come in on this? Because I think you make such an important point.
Hi, Brian. I'm not going to put my video on because I'm on my pajamas already, so I'm kind of going in.
Yeah, I'm sorry that I have to. See this place? I mean,
I will just join in this chat before I go to bed.
Welcome.
Yeah, no, I think because we have been I work in public health, so we've been reaching out to different ethnicities. So it's been quite different experience. I mean, I come from an Asian background. I lived in an Asian country. Absolutely different, but I'm working with people from Koreans and people from Indian communities, and you hear like previous group with Indian groups, they will literally talk and say their name as a complete different name. And so we get the phone call saying this person is not coming, and then we go in our records, there's no that person. So it's one of those things, and you're kind of like, yes, it's good that you all have different names, and when I have to send something to their GP, obviously the name is not the same they're mentioning. And they come back saying, like, in this address, we don't have that person. We have got this patient in that address. Is that the same person? So it was flowers, but it's kind of knowing that. And then we worked with some Korean groups where people had kind of like, they had different names, but it was, I'm just trying to remember in terms of Hong Kongers and Koreans, some of them have got the Western names. Yes. And you're thinking, and that really bleeds my heart, because on one hand, we are telling people we need to use your name. And then why do you have to kind of say a different name that's nothing to do with you, just to make life easier for healthcare professionals? Yes. We can learn names, and I struggle. I'm not saying I know all the names. When we first started, it takes me a few weeks before I get to their names, but it is something I feel like I should be able to do. Come on, it's not that hard. I should be able to know your name. You can tell me your name and I'll try and memorize it and then get back to you. But you don't have to change your name for me.
No, everything you're saying is absolutely right. And I think it's about making the effort and even having one or two goes at pronouncing names. I mean, I do, and I'll get it wrong and I'll have another go around. People don't mind. The most beautiful word in any language is the sound of your own name.
Yeah.
And again, as a quiet heads up to you all, you saw that one, if you like, that video is a kind of a patient-facing video. Will and the team from Firewood Pictures are about to start filming a staff one, because also I think it's a bit lazy on one level, but staff don't get to know what a person's name is, and so they'll go for the westernized version rather than because they think it's too, and we all need to step up and welcome the diversity of names and styles and stuff like that. But it's a circle, but for me, back to the cultural bit and your point, Beth, again, and therapeutic relationships are much more about doing therapy. But you made this wonderful point about Sherwood Forest, about, smiling at people in the corridor, joking often, taking time to connect to build a positive culture, the open, welcome attitude, and what works for staff, it works for patients, and vice versa. And one of the things about Sherwood Forest is the CEO there, the former CEO, who has now gone to Leicester. And exactly the same thing is happening, because everybody knows who the CEO is, and that's what certainly was the case in Sherwood Forest, I should say. I was struggling there. My brain was full, and my last brain had rejected me for a minute. But Richard, the CEO, was a really good, kind man, very open. Everyone knows who he is. And there's a fantastic blogger called gosh, I am having thought block at the moment. I think I must be jet lagged all the way from Jersey. Roy Lilly, and he talks about when he goes and visits organizations, if the CEO comes, that's a sign itself. And when they're walking back to CEO's office, everyone acknowledges them, says, "Hi, how are you doing?" He knows that that's a good environment. See, the thing is, none of us on this call, none of us are off duty for a heartbeat. And while you're walking down the corridor, distracted because you're thinking about the next patient, you might be thinking about an off duty, you might be doing something. You might walk past the cleaner. You may not notice them, but they will notice you not noticing them. How you interact with the person serving coffee in the Costas, somebody sees you. So we are always ambassador for ourselves, for our professions, for our organizations, for our NHS and health system cultures. We all make it better by, as Beth says, taking the time to connect, giving, when somebody says to me, like Naomi's point, how many times have we said to staff, "Good morning, how are you?" but don't stop and listen to reply. Well, every time I get on a plane, I do this, and actually I do it a lot anyway. When people say, "Hi, how are you?" I say, "Oh, can't complain, so I won't bother." See, everyone's expecting you to say, "Fine." But I say, "No, grand, I can't complain, so I won't bother," because you'll be bored hearing it and I'll be bored telling you. Now we're both winners. And it always gets a free giggle. And I do it because it's a bit of crack, but also it's a kind of a reminder that, we don't have to take ourselves too seriously either. Nikki's point about working in hospo for years before you became a physio and smiling at people. And it always gets surprises. Do you know what it is, Nikki? I think I do it all the time as well. It has people wondering what you're up to. And I think you should. And also, just as emotions are infectious, so are smiles. I smile at randoms all the time. I was smiling away at people in the while I was making toast this morning, and then I got struck up this great conversation about the first world problems of waiting for toast. Complete strangers. The next time I saw him when he was going out, he gave me a big smile. I gave him a big smile. That's how we make the world better. One little gesture at a time. And in Nikki's case, you are usually up to something as well. It is now 1 minute past 8. Thank you for coming. Thank you for being at our party. I am so honored to be part of Agile. I can't wait until April, because actually I'll see most people for the first time. I will see the chains I'm supposed to wear. So thank you all. Take it gently. Stay safe. Stay positive, test negative. And back to you, Sarah. And you'll call our people soon, buddy. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Brian. We so appreciate your time and your thoughts and the positivity that you bring, because it is a tough time at the moment. And I think this community of people is really beneficial on so many levels. And we don't have to be talking about clinicians and clinical all the time. We can be talking about the fact that we are all members of the same community. So thank you so much. Please do think about joining everyone to our first face-to-face conference in April. Have a look. It's going out on emails. We're Twittering about it. There's things out everywhere about it. So the link to sign up will be live very soon, but the dates are at the end of April, the 28th and 29th. Thank you everyone for coming, and have a good rest of your evening. Bye-bye.
Bye now. Take care. Thank you.